I remember I grabbed his arm and I'm pulling him in, and I just hear this multiple like cracks. It sounds like, crackle and pop. It was just like snap, snap, snap. What it was the bullets snapping past your head. And then, a second later, you actually hear the machine gun going off that they're shooting at you with.
Cowardice and recklessness are opposite reactions to the same inclination, putting your wants before the needs of the people to whom you've promised to remain faithful. With Daniel Knapp, though, it's even a little bit more than that. With him, there's this element of wanting both to emulate and get the respect of people above him. But for Knapp, the people above him aren't the people who are in charge. They're the people who are better Marines than he is. Those are the people whose approval he craves because he knows what it means to get it.
And I'm so confused. I'm standing there, and then my squad leader was like, "Knapp, get your dumb ass on the ground."
What is true bravery? What makes a hero a hero? Tested by the worries of what's happening at home, thousands of miles away, and the reality of what you're facing here and now. When your life is in danger every second, and it's either kill or be killed. From Wondery and Incongruity Media, this is Anthony Russo, and this is war. There's really no reason filling a vacant position or creating a new one should be so fraught with anxiety. In a perfect world, you would spend more time on the interview process than figuring out where to find the right people. ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies the people with the right experience, and invites them to apply for your job. These innovations have revolutionized the way you find your next hire. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. That's ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. From pretty much the first moment he arrived in America, Daniel Knapp dreamed of being a member of the U.S. military. By the time he got to high school, he was almost unrecruitable. When the Marine recruiters asked him what he wanted to do after high school, he just said, "I'm going to be a Marine." Daniel didn't have a big picture plan for his career. It was 2009, and all he wanted from life was the chance to go and fight. He was a little naive about it at the time, but for him, becoming a Marine was an invitation to adventure, danger, and the possibility of a little bit of glory. It was an attitude that would be best served in the Marines, at least from his mother's perspective. Sure, there was a war on, but ever since they had emigrated from England, Andrea Knapp didn't like her son's chances of staying out of trouble any other way.
We were both in a little bit of trouble, him slightly more than me, and, my mom didn't want me to end up doing the exact same thing, and this was almost a guarantee that I was gonna go a different route and get me as far away from home as possible. As far as the military concerned, with my family, my mom, talking to her about it, it was just like, we didn't really talk about going to war. The only aspect of joining the military that we ever discussed was just me staying out of trouble, and it was gonna get me, give me opportunities to do things like go to college and stuff like that. So, but we never really discussed, the aspect of me going to war, and really never even discussed what I was going to do in the Marine Corps, which was join the infantry, is what I intended to do.
Nearly every Marine who has been in combat says that when they graduated boot camp, they thought it would be the hardest thing they would ever have to do. It turns out not to be true for most of them, but for nearly all Marines at graduation, it is certainly the hardest thing they have ever done so far. Boot camp is a test to see if you can pass muster. Things will get harder for sure, but boot camp establishes a new baseline for how much you can take, and it is a baseline that you will build upon in the Marines.
The camaraderie is something that you learn from boot camp, and that's something that stays. There's always going to be someone there that is going through the same shit as you, and it sucks, but someone's always going to be there to fucking smoke and joke with about it,
In Daniel's mind, though, the infantry was the beginning and the end of the Marine experience. To learn to fight and to shoot, to develop a bond with other Marines, he couldn't imagine wanting anything more than that when he shipped out to Parris Island. The brotherhood part of it is critical to mention, because it has two sides. The obvious side, the one we talk about the most, is the fidelity, staying true to the other Marines and to the mission. But that fidelity is a two-way street. It was something that Knapp learned not long after finishing his infantry training and joining the 2-8 at Camp Lejeune. The 2-8 had just gotten back from Afghanistan, and it had gone really poorly for them. Too many of them hadn't made it back. Combat-hardened infantrymen have zero patience for boots, but they have even less patience for cowards.
They had literally just gotten back from Afghanistan, and they had one of the bloodiest deployments so far in the War on Terror. They had lost a ton of Marines. Here we are, the new guys, and we're replacing the guys that died. So they never let up. It's constantly hounding you and seeing how good your training is. And there was one guy in the platoon who, the whole platoon was pinned down in a firefight, pinned down by the enemy, and everyone was trying to regain the momentum, shooting back at the enemy, trying to get all their fires on targets and throwing grenades. And this guy, he literally laid down and wouldn't return fire and was like crying. I think that's just indicative of someone that has just been babied their entire life, made to believe that if they just quit, that's it, it's over. Obviously in combat, that's not how it is. If you quit, you die. He got treated worse than I did, and I was the new guy who had no experience.
Although he didn't really see it that way at the time, Knapp learned two critical things about combat upon his arrival at the 2-8. The first was obvious. The war in Afghanistan was no joke. He was hanging around with men who had seen their friends die, who had taken enemy lives, and who forever had been changed by that experience. The second was a little more subtle. Cowardice was real. The coward in the platoon probably had been as tough and as brave as Knapp had been when he was out of infantry school. But that guy didn't find out that he was a coward until it was way too late, and that's the kind of thing that cannot be made up or prepared for. Knapp wouldn't know for certain whether he was a coward until the bullets started flying, but until then he would steel himself and toughen himself all the more. He would excel and he would prove himself and try harder to be a better Marine every day. What else could he do?
Knowing about what I was going to experience made it more real to me and made me work even harder because I didn't want to let the guys down that I was surrounded by. And I took it very seriously. My entire life became, how am I going to prepare for this? So everything I did was oriented towards making myself a better infantryman. And my leaders realized that, and they made me into a fire team leader, which was kind of unheard of.
Having the leadership trust him with this kind of responsibility as they prepared for deployment doubled Knapp's resolve, but it also intimidated him a bit. It's a weird balance, seeking approval only to gain it and then feel as if it always is in jeopardy. Sergeant Ryan Kocher was Knapp's squad leader at the time, and he was relentless to the point that Knapp was pretty sure he wanted him dead. He made Knapp feel stupid for every mistake and inadequate almost all of the time. In retrospect, though, Knapp came to understand what he was being taught back then. The first part of it was simple. Marines with more promise have to be held to a higher standard. They have to be pushed toward greatness at every turn. The other thing, though, was all about shouldering responsibility and doing the toughest jobs yourself. It was a lesson best encapsulated from an incident near the end of Knapp's first tour.
I get goosebumps thinking about it. You just hear this massive explosion, and it's just silence. And everyone's looking at each other like, shit, 30 seconds later, the radio sparks up, and you could hear the fear in the voice on the radio. They had started taking fire immediately after that, I think, because I heard them machine guns returning fire as we were running to them. My platoon sergeant had literally sprinted, total disregard for his own safety, like geared up and sprinted to them so that he could make sure his Marines were good to go.
There was just one casualty, Corporal Michael Frazier, who would lose both his legs but survive the injury.
You know, we got Frazier medevaced. Our platoon sergeant gets out there and, like, you know, if any of his Marines was wounded or anything like that, like, he would be the one that has to see the shit that we don't want to look at. Like, he would go out there and pick up the pieces of the Marines that had been blown up, and nobody else would have to do that. And that was just, like, one of the small things that made him, like, such a great leader, in my opinion. You know, I always modeled myself on him, or tried to as best as I could.
For now, though, Frazier and the rest of the platoon were headed to Afghanistan as part of the 2-8. There were 38 Marines in Knapp's platoon, 30 of whom had never faced combat before. That would change almost as soon as they landed. By 2011, the rules of engagement had shifted to the point that patrolling members of the U.S. military had very specific practices for dealing with threats. Gut feelings couldn't be acted upon, only direct enemy contact. So no matter how certain he was of the danger, there was nothing Knapp or any of the other Marines could do to prevent an attack. They only could respond to it, and only when they were certain that the enemy was armed. They were in Afghanistan for less than a week when the Marines learned how frustrating a charge that could be. Your company is good at what it does. Why shouldn't it be great at finding and recruiting top people to fill positions? The scattershot approach to finding new hires just wastes valuable time and resources. There's really no reason filling a vacant position or creating a new one should be so fraught with anxiety. ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply for your job. These innovations have revolutionized the way you find your next hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. That's ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. If there is any recurring theme when people talk about combat, it's this notion of how time kind of slows down because there's so much to take in and your mind can only deal with one thing at a time. Knapp and the rest of the 2-8 barely had acclimatized themselves to their patrol base when they were slated for a long-range mission. Marines would patrol an entire area, sweeping for IEDs, clearing compounds, and generally making themselves targets in an effort to draw out the enemy. Knapp's squad had just jumped over a small canal on their way across a farmer's field. When the shooting started, Knapp was helping the squad sniper, who was bringing up the rear, navigate that jump with all of the gear he was wearing.
I remember I grabbed his arm and I'm pulling him in, and I just hear this these multiple cracks. It sounds like, crackle and pop. It was like snap, snap, snap. What it was the bullets snapping past your head. And then, a second later, you actually hear the machine gun going off that they're shooting at you with. And I'm so confused. I'm standing there like, what the hell is going on? I look over at the rest of the guys on my squad, and everyone's on the ground, and one of the guys in my squad is a saw gunner named Pulley, and he's in the air, jumping to the ground, and he just is opens up and just shoots 100 rounds in the direction that it was coming from. And then my squad leader was like, Knapp, get your dumb ass on the ground.
Most of the Marines on that patrol never had been shot at before, and certainly Knapp was among them, but most of the Marines on that patrol were not fire team leaders. Knapp ran through the protocols in his head in the time it took him to hit the deck. Step number 1 was check out your Marines. Knapp checked. He came up 1 Marine short. If Knapp had been slow to hit the deck, at least the deck he chose was solid ground. The company's saw gunner, Charlie Brown, had chosen a place too close to the canal and ended up sliding down the shallow, muddy walls and back into it.
And I was like, shit. And here we are, rounds are snapping over us, and I'm like, fuck, so now I gotta get Brown out of this canal. I look over at Tate, one of the guys in my squad, and he was next to me, and we're both pinned down by fire. I was like, we're just gonna have to, fire a couple rounds at them, try and get their head down, and then we're gonna have to go pull Brownie out of this canal. He gets out, he starts returning fire. I look back over there, and Tate's still sitting there.
Knapp was all in for the battle. After his initial confusion, he didn't even have time to bite back the fear, but rather, as with the transition after arriving at the 2-8, he rode the wave that was his fear of failure further than any lust for glory ever could have carried him. After all, the choices literally were lay down and die or press on. For most of the rest of the day, Knapp chose the latter without thought. The Marines were pinned down in a slight depression. The canal was to their east and the fire was coming from a compound to the north. Knapp was told to take his fire team and take the compound.
I got all my guys together and I said we started moving up a wall because there was a berm ahead of us that I knew we were going to try to get to. And then we just all did a dead sprint for this berm. Sergeant Tiger, the sniper that was with us, he's looking out. He spots a guy that we couldn't see that was like in the bushes just adjacent to where the compound was. He shot him. Then we had another guy that runs out of the bushes. We all just was like, fuck it, unloaded on him. Every single one of us just dumped at least a mag on him, crawling. And then he finally just slumped down. And I was like, motherfucker.
Chasing the Taliban from compound to compound across the flatlands of Afghanistan, it became clear that the rules of engagement weren't just hampering the American military offensive, they were endangering Marines. For example, since the Taliban knew that the Marines couldn't engage unarmed men, it wasn't uncommon for them to just leave their weapons behind and walk away from combat. Moreover, they would strategically place unarmed spotters with radios at a vantage point where they could direct the Taliban counteroffensives in relative safety.
So that was like their little command and control element. After one of our Marines got shot and killed, our company commander told us, hey, if you're in a firefight and there's a guy on a roof and he's got a radio, smoke his ass. So at that point, we just started shooting those guys too, because obviously there was command and control element of, that was getting our Marines killed.
But that change in the orders was in the future. For now, the Marines were left with their weapons, their will, and their guts as they pressed on. The plan was to link up with the rest of the platoon at a larger compound further along. But as Knapp and the other Marines approached it, they came under attack. The enemy fired from murder holes in the mud walls, which were impervious to the rounds the Marines used as they returned fire. For Knapp, they were also in the presence of a leadership that would define for him what it meant to command Marines.
So we're returning fire and trying to shoot grenades over the top of the wall as best we could. And my squad leader was like, all right, Knapp, come on, man, we gotta go. And I'm like, what? Fuck. And I was like, all right, well, fuck it, here we go. Told the rest of the guys, like, all right, guys, get ready, we're running our asses up there. It's the only chance we got right now. All right, go. And look around and nobody's moving.
Cowardice and recklessness are the extremes on either side of bravery. In the first case, you're not doing enough, and in the second, you're doing too much. But in the absence of a good solution, whether you're going to hold or move forward is tied up in what you believe about what you owe your comrades.
Sasha Lisk, he's just like ultimate leader, just freaking gets up and just starts dead sprinting towards it. And everyone was like, oh shit. And that kind of like gave everyone the courage to get up and run at that compound. And I just remember thinking, like, I have that image of him running, like, ingrained in my head forever. Like, that was the ultimate, like, fighter, leader. You know, he just was always leading by example. And then when we got up there, go figure, the guy saw us running towards him, so they were able to run away. And it was a cat and mouse game for the next, 3 or 4 hours, constantly moving from position to position, getting shot at.
Adrenaline only will carry you so far. After that, you're propelled by your will alone, and maybe a little bit by fear. It's not uncommon to talk about not giving into fear and not being ruled by it, but that isn't always the case. Sometimes it's preferable to be motivated by fear. Fear of failure, say, or fear of letting the other guys down. If you're going to give in to your fears in a war zone, those are probably the fears that are safest to fail to conquer. Because when there's danger around every corner, that fear is what will keep you moving forward. It's almost certainly what kept Nat and Tate moving forward as they approached the next compound.
I'm looking over at where we need to go, and he's looking behind us, kind of covering the rear, and he goes, "Yo, Nat, look at that dude over there." And this guy was like poking his head around this corner. And he goes, "Dude, he's got a gun." I was like, "What?" I look over, sure as shit, the guy's got a freaking AK hanging down by his side. And I'm like, "We'll fucking shoot him." And he pops off a couple rounds at him. It's really strange, actually, like going through years of training, and then all of a sudden you're actually in a situation where you have a guy and you are, he's trying to shoot at you and like you're justified to shoot him. Like, it's weird, whatever the reason is. Like, a lot of people need that like validation, like, can I shoot him?
It isn't really a question about legality or mercy. It's more a confirmation of what they're doing there. It's a question that affirms that they are in this together, but it is that kind of surprise that encapsulates a lot of the combat experience. Remember, at this point, Tate and Knapp each have about 3 hours worth of combat experience under their belts and never have had the opportunity to download what was happening. When you go from firefight to firefight, you don't expect to encounter an enemy during a lull. So far, every Taliban fighter they'd encountered already had been shooting at them. Finding one who was armed but not already firing was rare in their very, very limited experience. But as the battle wore on, Knapp would have the opportunity to discover the import of his actions. He and the other Marines were burning through adrenaline almost as quickly as they could produce it. And before the end of the day, Knapp would have to face his fears pretty much all alone. No matter what you do in the bathroom to get ready, Dollar Shave Club has everything you need to look, feel, and smell your best. They have amazing shower stuff, hairstyling products, toothbrushes and toothpaste, and of course, razors and shave supplies. I started getting the Amber Lavender Body Wash a few months ago after getting the trial size and test driving it for a while. Within a couple of uses, I was sold. I swim pretty regularly, and it only takes a drop or two of the Amber Lavender Body Wash to get up a good lather and take the chlorine smell right off my skin. It goes on fragrant, fresh, and clean, but it doesn't smell perfumey and it doesn't linger after my shower. That's how I get ready, but you're not me. You have your own way to get ready. You might shave your whole body to get ready for a bike race. Dollar Shave Club's executive razor and shave butter can help. You might do your hair to get ready for your soccer match. Boogies by DSC can help you get your hairstyle just right. The thing is, no matter what you do to get ready, DSC has everything you need. And right now, you can get ready with an amazing deal on any one of their starter sets. I recommend the Daily Essentials starter set because I love the Amber Lavender Body Cleanser. But you can't go wrong with any of them. Head over to dollarshaveclub.com/thisiswar to pick out your own DSC starter set for just $5. After your starter set, products will ship at the regular price, and make sure you check out their new video too. That's dollarshaveclub.com/thisiswar. 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 When the rest of the squad made it behind the berm, it was the first real planning and regrouping opportunity they had had since the fighting started. The Marines had lost track of the number of men in the compound they were trying to take, but they were almost certain there was just the one fighter left, manning a massive machine gun and firing sporadically through one of the murder holes. The Marines called for a high-mobility artillery rocket, or HIMAR. It's a weapon Knapp described as wicked expensive, with football-sized rounds and deadly accuracy at thousands of meters. They dialed in the coordinates and watched the rocket take out its target. The explosion was followed by the kind of silence you really only experience after chaos. But for Knapp, the battle would last another few minutes.
My squad leader was like, Knapp, get up there, because, you got to make sure, if there's guys that are there and they're still armed, and if they're injured, you got to get up there and kill their ass. There was a little bridge right before you get to the compound. And my squad leader, he understands how urgent it is. We got to get there, hurry up. And this is the first time I've ever been, this is the first day I've ever been in a firefight. And I'm freaking out. My adrenaline's been going so long. I'm like super, I'm all over the damn place. I'm yelling. And they were like, my squad leader was like, we got to get over this bridge. And I go, I'm not walking over that damn bridge. There's an IED there. We need to sweep it. And he's like, get over the bridge.
As Knapp and Charlie Brown made their way toward the bridge, they realized there was no way it was rigged. There still was no fire from the compound, no noise at all, just the aching quiet that was amplified by tension. And for the first time that day, for the first time since he had become a Marine, Knapp had the chance to understand that he was afraid, to genuinely contemplate his mortality. It was something he was having a difficult time shaking as they approached the wall the machine gunner was using for cover.
So my adrenaline's going and my heart's racing. I know there's a guy, because I've just watched a guy shooting at us from there. I'm hesitant to go around that wall because I'm like, fuck, man, like, it's one thing being shot at from like a couple hundred meters away. It's another thing walking around a corner and there's a guy there. So I don't know, it's hard to explain, but you have to go around there and it's important that you do it quickly. But at the same time, you're scared, so you're kind of like holding yourself back and you're fighting against that. And I'm sitting there and I'm walking up to it, and Charlie Brown just comes up behind me and he's like, Knapp, you're good, dude, let's go, boom. And then he takes lead and he comes around me and we cleared out this compound. And as soon as we cleared the wall, there was a guy in there. He was, like I said, he took an Excal round to the head, so he was dead. But, seeing that body there, right there for the first time up close and personal was like, I didn't have any weird feelings like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, I was just like, fuck yeah. Like, that's what you get. Don't fuck with us.
With the compound cleared and the cache of weapons collected, Kocher took a second to help Knapp dial it back. His concerns about the bridge having an IED were strictly fear-based, which was something he had known as soon as he was a little closer to it. But that was the lesson. That was the reminder. Now that he knew what it was like to fight all day, he could step back and see how he had allowed the chaos to cloud his judgment. As always, once he was called out on something, he knew he never would let it happen again.
And we're all talking about it, smoking and joking, eating food, and everyone's telling stories about the funny crap that happened that day. And, then it kind of hits us like, dude, this is like the third or fourth day of deployment, and we got 7 months. Like, we're dead for sure.
Over the next 7 months, the days were pretty much the same. Sometimes they would go days without enemy contact. Sometimes they had to fight for every inch they moved. Knapp said that after a while, it didn't even make sense to be scared. When an IED goes off, you react. When a firefight starts, you keep your eye on your guys and do what you can to neutralize the threat. They were out in the middle of nowhere establishing posts without showers or hot meals. Knapp has a fond memory of receiving a supply drop because they were able to use the pallets for beds and no longer had to sleep on the ground. It was dangerous and boring and grueling and seemingly endless. There were more casualties and guys got sent home, but besides the repurposed pallets, the only upside was that Knapp's platoon didn't have any Marines killed in action. But the rest of the 2-8 was not immune from death.
My company, we lost Corporal Richard, Matthew Richard, in June of that year. He had stepped on an IED. He was in 3rd Platoon, and they were patrolling to our east, and I was up on a post. watching and literally see the explosion go off. And then all of a sudden you hear them come over the radio calling for a CASVAC, and it's just like, damn. And then you hear his squad leader come over and say, we got one angel. And that means that, that he's killed. And it's like, man, and it just becomes more and more real, and you're just like, dude, I want to get home. My platoon sergeant walks into our tent one day, and he goes, all right, boys, they're coming to pick us up day after tomorrow. And it was like, we won the Super Bowl and the World Series and the NBA Finals all at the same time. Like, we went nuts. Like, it was just like, you finally know you're not going to die. And it was just amazing. You've made it.
Knapp got a meritorious promotion in the field and arrived home a corporal. He had taken the lessons he learned in Afghanistan to heart. He married Amy, who he had started dating before his deployment, and prepared to start training his own squad for his next deployment. Leading men was something he enjoyed doing. It was something he was good at. By the time they were ready to deploy again, he was a squad leader and a sergeant. The mission was different, though. They were flying helicopter raids out of the much more comfortable Camp Leatherneck, and Knapp's men were the ones engaging the enemy, while all he could do was trust that he had provided them the tools they needed to succeed.
I was 100% confident in their abilities to carry out the mission. I was a little bit nervous because this was the first time that one of my guys, had been in a position where they might have to be in combat with the enemy. I was nervous for him. I was confident in him. However, I was still a little bit nervous because I remember how I was and how scared I was to be, a coward. And I was hoping for his sake that he wasn't, because that's something you could never live down in the Marine Corps. I mean, if you don't perform, you don't have to be, Leonidas, the leader of the Spartans in combat, but you cannot be a coward. If you're a coward once, you will never live that down. Everyone will know about it. Everyone will know about what you did, and you might as well just forget ever being a leader. But so I was a little bit nervous for him, just like I was for myself back then. But he did great, so I was happy.
The second tour gave Knapp a particular insight into what he could do as a leader, into his vocation. He had watched and helped young Marines develop into confident combat veterans, and he had helped keep his guys safe. As the tour came to an end, it looked as if Knapp would become a drill sergeant. He liked the notion of helping cultivate the next generation of fighters. But before he could re-enlist, he got some news that threw all of his plans into disarray. Daniel Knapp was no longer welcome in the Marine Corps.
I had never been in any trouble, never even gotten like a negative counseling or anything like that, and got my paperwork submitted, and next thing I know, some major general somewhere says, nope, he has tattoos, he ain't staying in. I had tattoos on my forearms at this point. I had several tattoos before. The policy changed multiple times while I was in the tattoo policy. I had gotten tattoos prior to my deployments, and some major general somewhere in the Marine Corps who's never seen me saw a picture of my tattoos. None of them are offensive or anything like that. Decided that it was better for the Marine Corps if I just leave. I was devastated. At this point, I'd been in the Marine Corps for 6 years. During that time, I had spent the entire time knowing that I was going to stay in and this was going to be my career. I was proud of everything I'd done. And now I was in a position where, oh, hey, you got 90 days to figure the rest of your life out.
Knapp's superiors went to bat for him, as did his comrades and even the Marine Times newspaper, but it wasn't sufficient. Knapp packed up his wife and his gear and went to live with his parents in South Carolina. But the fact is, what he learned as a Marine to adapt and overcome served him almost as well as what he taught himself after arriving at the 2-8 6 years before. You can lay down and die, or you can press on.
Everything always works out for the best for me, even in life when situations are terrible. Everything that happens to me ends up working out in the long run. I don't know if I'm just lucky or what, but, I end up being happier in the long run, even if I thought that it was all going to be terrible.
Daniel Knapp became a highway patrolman. He still likes talking with other Marines. Talking, he says, keeps him grounded. He doesn't love being in massive crowds, but beyond that, he's found a way to be happy with his life, his career, and his future.
Before I went to boot camp, I didn't know what I was capable of. I didn't think that one day I would be able to be, so young and be leading Marines in war. And once you hit the lowest of the lows, once you've lived the suck, nothing is ever that bad. Two things that going through the Marine Corps gave me. One was a sense of just how vulnerable we really are and how it doesn't take much to kill a man, and you can be killed at any point. The second thing was the ability to not stress out about situations because I lived through what I would consider hell, and I was able to do it with my buddies and my brothers and do it with a smile. And we all came out of it together. And so I know it can't ever be that bad.
But what made Daniel Knapp a good leader and what made him a good Marine was that there was no quid pro quo for him when it came to his duty. He did it for the love of honor, driven by a fear of doing anything but his best, and with a knowledge that, whatever the rules, whether they be about tattoos or engaging the enemy, they are secondary to the oath of fidelity. After all, for an honorable person, oaths are never contingent. Next time on This Is War.
I'd go find some new camis, and I didn't realize, but I had whole bottoms of my camis just soaked with blood of Renomakis. When I was dragging him, he just dripping blood all over.
Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. To get show notes, more information, or to subscribe to This Is War, you simply can tap or swipe over the cover art. When you're there, you'll see offers from our sponsors. Please help support our shows by supporting them. Also, take a moment and give us a 5-star review. Are you a combat veteran, or do you know one with a story to tell? Reach out to us at stories@thisiswar with your dates and branch of service and a brief description of the story that you'd like to share. Follow the show on social media at This Is War. I'm Anthony Russo. This Is War is produced by Incongruity Media, executive producer Hernan Lopez for Wondery.